Hello, my bananas, or should I say mabuhay, or mabuhay. I learned that the top 3% of my audience is from the Philippines, or is at least the top three areas is from one of them's from the Philippines. So I did some research on how to say hi in a casual manner, and that is what I learned. So mabuhay. If there's another way to say it, then please let me know, because I do love learning, new languages and stuff. And I thought that'd be interesting to start off the video with. I'm just gonna go ahead and get to the point. But this video is thanks to Kitty, I guess, for suggesting it on my last video, since they mentioned wanting a coloring tutorial, and I figured I'd take it the extra mile and just do my whole process. So I hope this is kind of what you wanted or expecting, and I hope everyone else can find some information out of this, since I know a lot of people kind of ask this question on other platforms of mine, and I figured it was about time I did it anyway. So we're gonna go ahead and get into it, but I will let you guys know that I did ask my Discord server for any specific questions that they might have, so I'm going to try and answer those too, besides my own comments and stuff. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask me, then you can also join my Discord channel and ask me. I have a suggestions channel where you could go to, but you can also just add me in general or anything, and I'll try my best to answer it as fast as possible. Alright, now let's get into the first topic. So I decided to record the sketching and planning phase of the specific commission to help show a bit more of my process. I do use the ClipStudio 3D models that are built in with the program whenever I can, but as you can see later on, I did kind of struggle and didn't like how it turned out, so I decided to do my own studies, which we'll see in a minute. And I don't usually do these, and I've been trying to do them more, so you can see where I kind of switched to a different canvas about right now, yeah. And what I usually do is I study the picture and try to draw it on my own first, and then I trace it and then redraw it again, when maybe add a bit of my own pizzazz. As you can see, I kind of made his chest puff out more and made him a little more open presenting, I guess. And then for the second guy, I only did one picture and kind of liked the pose the first time, so I just went with it. And then from here, I copy and paste it into the original canvas and just kind of fix it up, give him some hands, add the clothes and the jersey onto it. I don't do this a lot, which again, like I said, I wish I did, because I really like how these turned out, even though right now it looks a little different than how it ends up, because I get the artist tunnel vision where I just stare at something so long and I don't realize how weird it looks till after. So as you can see right now, it kind of looks a little Crooked Man-esque, because I guess you could get off with putting his head that far back, but I don't think it worked for me, so I just redrew his face completely, and I'm glad I did, because his name is Porches, but I call him Pot Roast because that's what it reminds me of. And his face is very round and kind of cheerful, so I really wanted to make sure I got that in here. And he does have really strong smile lines, and I can't remember if I put that in the final render or not. I was really hoping I would remember, because I wanted to make sure that was evident, since it's one of his biggest characteristics. And again, you can see me just kind of fixing it up, because I think at this point I had got up and walked away, and since it's the Clip Studio built-in time-lapse, you can't see me pause. And when I came back, I realized, oh, it's not that great, and I know I can do better, which is why it's important to walk away and reevaluate what you're doing. So, and then I drew the second guy. I can't remember his name right now, but if I do, I'll put it on the screen. I just made sure to kind of emphasize that they're together, but they're still kind of different people. And I mostly been learning this from my friend who commissioned me, and he told me that the person on the right, whose name I'm forgetting, is kind of more reserved and not good at showing emotion, as much as Poitras is. So I was okay, I'm gonna make sure and try to show that in their posing, because I know, even though he's not as emoting, he's still obviously kind of got some confidence, since he's a race car driver or an F1 driver. So I wanted to make sure and kind of put that into their body language, because another part of how I pose and stuff is I try to keep in mind the character. and kind of how they are and what I can do to show that in their body. And again, you can see me using another 3D model, because 3D models are not cheating. I don't care who says that. They can, bugger off. But I'd use a 3D model I had bought with my clippy points of a very specific, kind of androgynous hand, and it saved my life, okay? These hands are one of my favorite parts of the drawing, just because I was able to, get them done like that. I didn't have to worry about it. And another example of a 3D prop is the stick I had just got. It was just a basic staff with some guidelines on it, so I used that to draw this little hockey stick, because I couldn't find a specific 3D model of the hockey stick, so I just kind of used a bunch of reference images off screen and then put it right there. And it did work out. I do like it. I wish I could have made it a little bit more detailed, but since I couldn't find a very nice reference of a specific kind, I just kind of had to go off generalization. And you didn't see it earlier, but I did have a 3D model of a racing car helmet. And I think in the reference picture I used for the other guy, they were holding a helmet, but I did have a 3D model of a helmet in this position just to be safe. And I did kind of trace over it a couple times, which really helped me get the idea of a shape to go off of, because racing car helmets are kind of complex to me in the sense of drawing them from different angles. It's not just up or down or front facing. So since it was a 3/4 angle, it was kind of I needed some type of reference. And you can kind of see in the top right his helmet, and I tried to emulate the shape. I kind of had to generalize a little bit since you couldn't see all of it, so I don't want to put too much emphasis on it to distract from the people themselves. Since this was a banner commission, I wanted to try and make sure it was important that the people were the focus of it. I did also want to talk about the specific thing I kind of do, which I feel more people should be comfortable doing, is just straight up coloring or drawing over the sketch completely. And by that I mean, instead of kind of adhering to the quote-unquote lines of your sketch, I think it's healthy and okay to just draw over it the minute you think of something or something you notice, because that's one of the bigger things that kind of helped me in this part of my process, is that instead of worrying about staying within the lines or trying to stick to anything, I just draw over it. You can kind of see me going over the hair and adding some details. And earlier you probably saw me redraw the shirt a little bit completely. Instead of erasing or just redoing the line art, quote unquote lines of it, I just drew over it. I try to avoid thinking too hard in this moment and just drawing what looks right and what feels right in the moment. And you can see me work on the background, and I kind of just drew it as is and a little bit over the sketch itself, because again, it's just a sketch. I figure my line art is what draws most people in, since it's usually the most common question I get is what brush am I using, or how do I go about my line art. And in this case I did use a different brush, but I still apply the same rules that I usually follow, since I love this brush a lot and you might see it more often, so I figure it helps that I use it and still kind of apply what I'm doing to it. Now, I guess the biggest part that I feel a lot of artists should follow if they feel it fits is the rule of line weight. Line weight is usually what adds depth to a drawing, both inside and outside of the rendering itself, and it can range from being something simple to being what really makes the drawing whole. And you might notice it in certain artists, or maybe some mangas and anime that do it. Very rarely do I see it in manga though, since I guess for time crunch reasons it's kind of hard to add that to everything, since some people might find line art to be either an afterthought or maybe more an in the moment thought like me. And I've kind of built the habit to make it very subconscious, I guess. So you can sometimes see me doing it right now, I make the forearms in his helmet thicker because I want it to stand out a little bit more, since realistically it would be closer to the viewer, I guess, even though my art itself isn't very realistic. like style wise, I still kind of try and apply rules I feel like are visually pleasing. And it's hard for me to like, I guess, kind of give an idea of how I do that, since it's mostly just basic rules I follow from certain tutorials I see all the time. And I'm gonna put examples on the screen since I feel like they word it and show it all better than I can. But it's basically what I do every time. Some other examples is like the sleeves and some of the folds on Poitra's like jersey and stuff. I just make completely black because I feel like it helps emphasize depth and kind of like a stylistic choice for me. And you can kind of see it on Oscar's like glove and under his like arm in between his helmet on the right also. And also like the back of their hair and certain parts of their noses and like the neck, I always make full on black. Because again, even though it's a stylistic choice, realistically, those probably would be like the darkest points, I guess, from this angle. I mean, the nose is arguable, but realistically, it'd probably like the hair and the neck would be the darkest part. And also like the underside of their ears, like the corners of their mouths, I also do this on. And you can also see it on like the hair and certain parts of the bangs and stuff. It's just, again, it's stylistic, but it also has some, I guess I could say, like realism built into it, since again, it would be most likely the darkest parts of the view from here. My rendering process is kind of hard for me to explain since I feel like I change it almost every time I draw, but the best way I guess I can go about it is just going step by step. So I'm gonna start off with, of course, the flat colors. I had them pre-picked out already on my sketch, which we saw earlier, and I just kind of color picked them and then drew them to the side so I could keep like referencing them. And right now this is me just kind of trying to fill it out and get an idea of what I want to do. You can't see it, but I was referencing my older Hinata picture I drew because I really liked how it turned out and I wanted to try and replicate that. So I had that off to the side as a reference and kind of like tried to stay close to how I did it, which was I chose the shading colors and how I was going to do it based off the relative colors. Like for Poitra, since he's not super light, but he's still not super like as dark as I drew Oscar. So I kind of gave him a reddish, more orange tone. And I went with like a cell shading like style with a little bit of airbrushing, which is my usual, like I've always been doing that. But what I liked the most about how I did it on Hinata is I had it kind of like a gradient style where I drew like a darker color and then tried to give it a warmer, lighter color on the outside. At first I did on the inside because that's kind of how I used to do it, but I liked it better off with like the darker inside, lighter outside, which has a name. I think it's called subsurface scattering, at least with skin, and it is a real life like phenomenon you can see, and you might have seen a lot in tutorials, but I don't apply it that much since I'm not like a very realism artist. I don't usually follow very realistic rules, only things I find visually appealing. Like right now I'm trying to apply like a lighter color on the inside of his jersey, and it's hard because I don't want his jersey to get lost like with everything else. Since Oscar's like, I guess, racetrack suit's orange, I kind of wanted to try and give it like relative coloring. So I try to put some orange into the parts closest to Oscar, and you're gonna see me try and do it vice versa. But most of what I do is just basic cell shading rules, which you can find tutorials for a lot. But basically how I go about it is I usually try and I don't follow 100% like any specific rule besides that darker inside and like lighter outside part, but I also try to apply basic color theory in kind of like relativity Like for example, you can't see it very well, but I tried to apply like Poitra's skin color to his jersey near the neck and stuff, and it made it very, very light, just to kind of give some glow per se. And I do it almost everywhere in like all of my art, and you can kind of see it sort of like right now in Oscar's hair. I gave it a light colored undertone just because I liked it. Like, it wasn't anything specific, it's just I really liked how it turned out in the sketch, so I applied it to the final drawing. And I guess you could argue it's like his racetrack suit color bouncing back off on him, but most of it's just kind of bounce light is the word I'm looking for, bounce light everywhere. And again, like with his racetrack, I gave it a lighter orange on the orange parts because I wanted it to be not super blending in and not too dark, just kind of enough to emphasize shape and volume. So I also like adding shine, since I try to distinct material texture. So since I would assume his tracksuit's kind of like sheer-ish, I added like a shine down the middle, and you can see in different parts of his tracksuit. And on his helmet, I also tried to do like basic 3D lighting, which I used to have a bad habit of ignoring, but now I've tried doing it more often. So you can see on his helmet like some volume and kind of everywhere else, and that's pretty much like the gist of it. A lot of it also like with the line art coloring in like my halftones that I kind of want to go into, since someone did ask about my halftones and pattern use. It's very random, especially the line art color. Line art color is mostly based off the relative color again. Like, since they're warm, I use warm colors, and since something might be cool, I'll use a cooler color. And usually how I go about it is making like a lighter version and then applying it, lowering the opacity, and then just doing that over and over again. And then with halftones, those are just very based off what I feel like they fit with. Like the hair highlights I gave halftones to give like that glow factor without using an airbrush. And you can see me do it again on a lot of other things in the drawing. But I mostly apply it to the lighter colors and things I feel like should have texture. And another thing I also like to do is just kind of airbrush like light cooler tones and shadows to make them kind of feel dark, like more farther away, I guess. And something you might see me do is like I'll duplicate the final image, up the saturation, and then just kind of fix it as is from there. And sometimes what I do a lot is I'll duplicate it again, reverse the gradient or invert the colors, lower the opacity and set it to like a soft light mode, and you just kind of fix it from there. Because at the end of the day, a lot of my rendering and color choices is just messing around with gradients and filters and like layer modes. And I might go more in depth on that eventually, since that would take me a lot more planning to do, because it's not tedious, but for me it's tedious because it's a very, like, there's a lot I think about when I do it. And I would go more in depth into that here, but I didn't do a lot in this picture. So next time, if I make another video like this, I will go over that and talk about it a lot more. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope this was helpful and a little bit informational. I know it probably seems kind of like rushed, but I promise I actually did take more time with this one this time. I know the ending was kind of rushed just because I did not record as much as I thought I did, but I tried to fix it, so hopefully it isn't that bad. And again, thank you everyone for the support. I really appreciate it. And I will just let everyone know that I do have a Ko-fi if you want to support me in any other way. And I do have a Discord server where I am active every day, and we have events every week, and every now and again we VC and have fun. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please go on and head on over. We welcome all bananas, and we hope to see you. Bye bye.